Hi, I'm Rochelle Gentile, president of the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra League. I'm here at the Dubuque Golf and Country Club, kicking off our virtual Soundbites series. Under normal circumstances, you'd be right here with me, enjoying a great lunch and a preview of the DSO's upcoming concert, and I'm sure you will be again soon. As you may know, the DSOL develops and administers projects, programs, and events that provide music education opportunities to folks of all ages, as well as financial support to the DSO and its youth ensemble programs. Each year, the League contributes support to youth education events and programs such as the 3rd and 5th grade Arts Trek concerts, the 4th grade Adopt a Musician program, the Youth Concerto competition, the Dubuque Symphony Youth Ensembles, and the Summer String Camp. Along with our many other endeavors is our Senior Classics program, now in its 9th year, providing performances by DSO musicians to entertain residents and their families at local nursing homes and assisted living centers. While the past year has looked a little different, we continue to focus our efforts on fundraising. We encourage and welcome you to join us in our 54th year of supporting the DSO. Please check out the DSO's website for more information about how you can get involved. We hope to see you soon, but before I go, I'd like to introduce our esteemed music director and conductor, Dr. William Intriligator.
Thank you and welcome. This is William Intriligator coming to you from the offices of the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra, and I'm excited that we are having our Classics 1 concert here in just a short little bit of time. And I want to tell you a little bit about the Overture in C by Fanny Mendelssohn Hensel. Before I do, I want to give a shout out to our friends at the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra League for everything they do to help the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra, all of the support that they give us, the educational support, the support of our musicians in the schools, these Soundbites luncheons, and we hope to get back to them live pretty soon, and so much else. So thank you to the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra League. Well, who was Fanny Mendelssohn Hensel? That's a good question. First off, the name Mendelssohn kind of gives away that she was related to the famous composer Felix Mendelssohn. In fact, she was his older sister. But Fanny wasn't even her real name. Cecilia was her name, but everybody called her Fanny. She was 4 years older than the Mendelssohn, Felix Mendelssohn, I should say. And the two of them grew up so closely together with a similar education, similar musical training, similar studies in literature and languages and art and music. They had this incredible upbringing in Berlin at the time. And I'm talking about the early 1800s. Fanny was born in 1805, Felix in 1809. There were two other younger siblings, younger than Felix. But their father was a wealthy banker and could provide the best education possible. And when it came to actually seeing that the children were very talented in music, the father went so far as to hire an orchestra, mostly strings, to perform new pieces written by Fanny and Felix every week on a weekend. And it was just something that they did in the sort of the back carriage house of their estate. And so being of the time in the early 1800s, women weren't really expected or allowed to become professional composers, but there had always been many women composers. Their music largely went unpublished and was usually just performed for small circles of friends or family. And that was the case with Fanny Mendelssohn. She was actually a wonderful pianist herself. Her mother was actually her first piano teacher. And it's said that at the age of 14, as a sort of birthday present for her father, she played all of Johann Sebastian Bach's preludes to the Well-Tempered Clavier by memory. She was a fantastic pianist, as was, of course, Felix, too. But I want you to remember that when it comes to Felix, who's the more famous composer, and Fanny, the sister, Fanny was the older sister, in many ways the role model for Felix. And I want to mention this because some people are aware of Fanny Mendelssohn's music, and they might think that she's the sort of, I don't know, lesser of the two Mendelssohns, or the younger maybe, or somehow she followed in Felix's footsteps. Not at all. In fact, it's sort of the other way around, where Felix oftentimes went to Fanny and showed her his music, asked her his advice, it got to the point, it was like a lifelong correspondence and collaboration, where not collaboration, but a kind of, you know, that he would trust her and her opinions and her wisdom. In fact, as adults, they had this correspondence mostly by letter. And Felix had the nickname Minerva for his older sister, because the Roman goddess of wisdom, it seemed like that's what she was. She was so wise when it came to advising him on his music and on all of his projects. So that's important to bear in mind. Now, the name Hensel of her last name comes from her husband, who was the wonderful artist Wilhelm Hensel. They married in 1829 when she was about 24 years old. They had a number of miscarriages, but they did have a child named Sebastian Hensel. Apparently on his first birthday, when he was just, you know, going from being a newborn to being, well, a one-year-old, she presented him in such a way, a special cantata for soprano and alto soloists, four-voiced choir, and orchestra. She wrote a lot of music, but it wasn't published. And even though she wrote this cantata that involved chorus and soloists and orchestra, most of her music was songs and piano pieces, solo piano pieces, or chamber music, because most of the performances that she had were in people's homes, and that's how she performed. A few of her pieces were published in her lifetime, but not very many. There is actually an interesting story that Felix, to help promote her music, published some of her pieces under his name, and he was credited with, you know, composing some of her music. One time, Felix was visiting Queen Victoria and Albert in Buckingham Palace in England. He had actually several tours of the United Kingdom, and at one tour, he came to Buckingham Palace, and Queen Victoria performed for him this song, which was her favorite song by him, Italienne. And after the performance, Felix Mendelssohn was so moved, but he had to confess to the Queen that actually that was written by my older sister, Fanny. So that's interesting. All right, let me get into the music here of this overture. This is her only known piece that she wrote for orchestra alone. Every other piece that she wrote was, like I said, mostly piano pieces, chamber music, songs with piano, and some orchestral pieces that involved singers, like choruses and soloists. So as a pure orchestral piece, this is the only known piece. We only know about this piece through a kind of interesting kind of detective story that happened in the 1980s. So a board member of the Women's Philharmonic, an orchestra based in California, went to Germany to the Mendelssohn archives in this Berlin library and hunted down and found the manuscript of this piece. There was an entry in Fanny Mendelssohn's diary, or no, it was a letter actually. It was a letter to Felix in 1834 where she wrote, "I conducted my overture. It greatly pleased me to hear this piece for the first time after 2 years and to find that almost everything in it was as I had imagined it would be." And this letter to Felix was dated in 1834. So we knew that there was an overture that she wrote in 1832, but it was performed this one time with Fanny Mendelssohn herself conducting it, which is significant for a woman at that time. And so there was sort of a hunt to find this music. And the music was found, the manuscript was found, and then a performing edition came out. And the first performance of it in the modern age took place in 1986, exactly 152 years after the first performance, conducted by Fanny Mendelssohn. So this piece was conducted with the composer on the podium 2 years after it was written, in 1834. And then it lay dormant and unknown until it was discovered in 1986 and performed then. Nowadays, this piece is getting performed all over the world. Orchestras all over the world are performing this wonderful piece. It's an overture, but it's not an overture to an opera or incidental music to a play or something like that. It's just a concert overture, and actually Felix Mendelssohn wrote many overtures like that. And there are some other things that in the music that might sound like Felix Mendelssohn's music. There's a moment in the second theme of this overture that sounds very much like his overture to A Midsummer Night's Dream. But, you know, it's important to remember that Fanny Mendelssohn didn't borrow from Felix or something like that. This is evidence of two musically kindred spirits, two siblings who were raised and educated side by side in the same kind of manner and whose personalities were probably roughly similar. And so her music might sound a little bit like Felix Mendelssohn's music, but it's hard to say whether he was inspired by her music or she was inspired by him, or perhaps it's just the commonality of both their nature and nurture, you know, their genes and their upbringing were so similar. One of the things I like to think of is that, in a way, this is an overture for us to get to know her. It's our way of hearing who she was musically and perhaps in her own personality. I think you're going to really enjoy this beautiful piece that has some wonderful little parts that where the horns and trumpets have little outbursts and wonderful parts for the woodwinds and the strings. It's a very, very accomplished piece in its use of the orchestra. And after a slow introduction, it sort of zips into a fast allegro section and then gives us a traditional kind of first movement form of a sonata form. And so I hope you enjoy the Fanny Mendelssohn Overture in C when the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra performs it. Thank you.